Welcome, everyone, to my show. I'm your host, Landon Sikahema. Today, we have two guests. We have my Uncle Robbie. He's Robbie Bosco. He's the starting quarterback for the 1984 National Championship BYU football team. And we have Tom Holmoe, the athletic director of BYU. He's a four-time Super Bowl champion, 3 as a player with the 49ers, and 1 as a coach for the 49ers. Thank you guys both for coming on the show.
Thanks, Landon.
I want to start with 1984. Obviously, Uncle Robbie, you're the starting quarterback for the BYU Cougars. You led them to an undefeated season and, first national championship in the history of BYU. And, the same year, Tom, you're with the 49ers. You guys finished the regular season 15-1, so you're almost undefeated, and you guys end up winning the Super Bowl. I know you guys maybe had a year or two of overlap at BYU, but in this 1984 season, did you guys have much interaction? Obviously, you're both busy and you weren't living near each other anymore, but either throughout the season or when the season was over and you were both world champions, did you guys have much interaction with each other in that 84 season?
Yeah, I called Tom and wanted to talk, and he said he didn't have enough time for me, so that Super Bowl was a little bit too big for me, I guess.
Yeah, that's about it. You know how that story is, Landon. Well, I'll tell you this, though. The night of the championship game it wasn't the championship game, but it was BYU playing Michigan.
Yeah.
Lori and I went out to dinner, and we had to make sure that we could have dinner with a table facing the TV. And just to show my Cougar allegiance, I was jumping up and down. People are looking at me like, what is this guy rooting for BYU for? But my recollection is I don't think Robbie and I talked about it until I came back to BYU and we were coaching together.
Interesting.
But the thing that is true, though, I actually did watch that Super Bowl. And so having former Cougars on the team made it a lot more fun to root for the Niners. And so it was a proud moment for all of us.
That's cool. So Todd Shell was on the team also. Were there other Cougars too?
Billy Ring was a running back that came to BYU as a junior college transfer, and he was a senior when I came in as a freshman. So Bill Ring, and he played a number of years with the Niners and was a banker in the city of San Francisco afterwards, and has remained true blue to the Cougs.
Nice. That's really cool. That's really awesome. Now let me ask Uncle Robbie, I want you to break down, the little bit of the X's and O's for me, a little bit of that 84 season. My dad has always told me that, obviously you guys are the only undefeated team. That's why you ended up getting the national championship. But if there was one team that, theoretically could have laid claim to the national championship that year, it was Oklahoma under Barry Switzer. And he's told me, they had the starting players, of course, Brian Bosworth, Tony Castillas, Keith Jackson, who would be my dad's teammate in Philly. I'm sure you're going to tell me that, and my dad always says you guys would have beaten them. But yeah, break it down. How do you think the game would have gone? Because I know you didn't play them, and they only had one loss. But if you had played them, why would you guys still have beaten them? You think would it have been a high-scoring game, low-scoring? How do you think it would have went?
Well, I think looking back at both those teams, we had a pretty good defense. We had Leon White, Kurt Govea, Kyle Morrell, Jim Herman. And so we had a lot of guys that played in the NFL for a number of years, and they were loaded. I mean, they had a ton of guys on their team too. So it probably would have been a low-scoring game.
Okay.
Because of the defense was so good.
Yeah.
But even back then, I know Oklahoma and Washington played. So we actually tried to play Washington in the Holiday Bowl, and they declined to play us. So we were trying to find the best team we could. I wasn't involved with all that stuff, so I had no idea. But we were just happy to be part of that game.
Oh, that's really awesome. That's really cool. Now, Tom, let me ask you, as a defensive player, I know you're drafted by the Niners in '83. Going from the Cougars and now to the Niners under the great Bill Walsh, what was it like as a defensive player practicing, against this innovative, groundbreaking West Coast offense that took all of football by storm in the 80s? First at BYU, and now you're practicing against them every day on the Niners. If you're being honest, was it tougher practicing against them, at BYU, or was it more efficient, against Bill Walsh on the Niners? I mean, what was the contrast like?
Well, I came from a high school in the Southern California area where we ran the veer, so I didn't know what a passing offense was, and there weren't very many really imaginative offenses at that time. So going back to that last question you asked Robbie, Landon, I think that Oklahoma and many of the teams I think Oklahoma would have had a little bit of struggle trying to work that out, because what Lavelle and his staff put together in that, it was basically the same offense. If you go back, you could do a whole podcast on it, but the roots of that system with Bill Walsh and with BYU started in Cincinnati with the Bengals under Paul Brown. And Bill Walsh was on that staff. And so was Robbie, your coordinator.
Yeah, Doug Scoville.
So Doug Scoville brought that to BYU, and then they ran parallel along each other. So I'm going to tell you, by the time I got to the 49ers, I had like an advanced PhD in trying to defend a new offense that nobody could really stop. Nowadays, Landon, you see so many people have tried different things and failed, but there are some ways that you could tie up the West Coast offense a little bit. And so offenses just kind of morph a little bit, but you're going to see that is cyclical. Every once in a while, you see somebody come back and there's wrinkles to that BYU 49er offense that you see throughout college football and pro football today.
Wow, that's really amazing. It's really interesting. Uncle Robbie, let me ask you, in '86, did you spend the full season with the Green Bay Packers? Were you there for the whole season by chance?
Yeah, I was there for '86 and '87. And in '88, I started out, and that's when I got released from the Packers.
Okay. In '86, if you don't mind me asking, probably one of the worst cheap shots in NFL history, but when George Martin grabs Jim McMahon and slams him to the ground, and that's why they didn't defend their famous '85 Super Bowl run that well. Were people buzzing like that in the locker room? I mean, were all the Packers defensive players happy about it, or did they get on him? I know how fierce that rivalry was back then, but what was the general gist in the Packers locker room after that cheap shot, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, it was crazy. I was actually on the sidelines kind of right in front of that play. And first of all, I never knew how fierce the NFL rivalries were, but the Packers and Bears were like crazy. And I don't think anybody made a big deal of it at the time, like at halftime or after the game. Kind of made it just part of the business. But, it was definitely a cheap shot. The play was over for 3 seconds or 4 seconds. Yeah. And all of a sudden he grabs him and just slams him on the back of the head. And so it was pretty crazy. But yeah, I wasn't really talked too much about it during the game.
Interesting. Crazy. Tom, on your end, I'm interested. Do you have any really funny or really crazy personal anecdotes about Charles Haley by chance?
Oh my goodness. I love Charles. I just saw him a couple months ago. We went down to visit a friend of ours who was sick and on the team, and we had a great conversation with a number of the old boy 49ers. But I remember when Charles came into the locker room his first rookie year, he was just this young buck, kind of a skinny little kid from James Madison University. And people were giving him grief about it. And he came and he lockered right next to me. So we had a great relationship, and he was one of a kind, really one of a kind. He had this energy, and he was up and down a lot. But when he turned on that energy, he was one of the very best in the business, as you could see from the way he helped win Super Bowls in San Francisco and in Dallas. And obviously that led to him being inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But he just had such a love for the game, and his passion, he would get so intense. And sometimes that carried over into the locker room. Robbie can tell you those stories. The intensity level, the importance of passion of some of those players is second to none. And we got to witness that firsthand. Sometimes you tried to get away from that firsthand, but it was a beautiful time with Charles.
Oh, that's cool. Same question about Bill Romanowski. I mean, he's also famous for being pretty off the wall. Do you have any crazy or funny anecdotes about Bill Romanowski?
Yeah, well, that was very similar personalities in that they were very, very good football players. Both of them studied the game really intensely, and so they were always prepared, but they came about it in a different way. Bill was very, very serious about the game, and Charles was kind of he was a little wacky about the game, but both of them were great players on great teams. And we needed both of those guys on their respective teams and years to win those championships.
Nice. Just out of curiosity, as crazy as they're both known for being, what was their relationship like? Did they clash much, or did they kind of feed off of each other with their crazy antics? Or
I think most of the time they stayed away from each other, or we kept them away from each other.
Yeah.
But that team was a very tight-knit team for many years. One of the reasons that we won the way we did was we had, it's hard to do it in today's day and age of free agency, but we kept a bunch of guys together for a long period of time. So we learned to love each other, play for each other. The money was good at that time. It was all relative, but there's not too many people that were really playing for the money. They were playing for the game. So you saw players playing hurt. You saw players sacrificing. A lot of it was off the field where you took care of each other. And to this day, Landon, I have a text thread on my phone with about 15 defensive backs from the period of time. And we talk about once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. And that's from 35 years ago.
Oh, that's really amazing. That's really cool. I have to ask you about one more player. I think you overlapped for at least a couple years with Jack Hacksaw Reynolds.
Yeah.
Do you have any funny or crazy anecdotes about him by chance?
Oh, he was the craziest of all.
Really?
Of all. He was the smartest football player that I ever played with. He never coached, but he just learned the game so well. And there was no one that was as prepared as Jack going into a game. I mean, by the time he got to the Niners, he was a long-standing veteran in the league, and he couldn't really run as fast, or he wasn't as flexible to get through the line and to scrape off the tackles and stuff. So he had to have his mind into it. And it's a long story, but he really kind of changed my attitude. My rookie year, there's another rookie named Ricky Ellison who had a nice career in the NFL. That was my roommate. And Ricky and I would drive together. And Ricky one day asked Hacksaw if he would let us watch film. And he said, "No, I'm not going to let you watch film." We came in early in the morning and he wouldn't let us watch with him. He had to do it by himself. The next day, Ricky said, "We're going to get in there again." "No, you can't be in there." Next day, 3 days. Finally, he goes, "Okay, you can watch film with me, but don't say a word." So he would sit there and write note after note after note. He had these spiral notebooks stacking up in a box. He'd look at film from practice, film from games. And finally, after about 2 weeks, he'd say, "Aren't you going to ask any questions?" And we said, "Jack, you said not to say anything." "Well, you're not going to learn anything if you don't ask any questions." And so we started asking questions, and that was our rookie year. And that's where I learned that if I was going to make it in the league, I didn't have the physical prowess to dominate. So I had to make it mentally. And Ricky and I, both being roommates for 7 years, we just took off and we listened to Jack. We went every morning and watched and listened to Jack. And then we had our meetings and our practices and all the film work and all that. Next morning, back with Jack. And there's no question in my mind that that's why I got into coaching And that's why I love the game like I do now. It's because of the little intricacies that I learned about how to study film and learn about the opponent.
Oh, that is really cool. That's an amazing story. Thank you. I know this happened a good amount of time before you got there, but do you happen to know the story of how he got his nickname of Hacksaw by chance?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Do you mind telling it, or?
When we went, yeah, no problem. When we went to the Super Bowl in '84, he had the story printed out on a piece of paper. He was a grumpy guy. And so people would come up to him and go, "Hey, Jack, can you tell us a story of how you got the name Hacksaw?" And he'd go, here's a story. I'm not going to tell it. I've told it so many times. You should know it by now. And so he had it written out on a piece of paper. But he was at Tennessee, and I think somebody had parked a car in his parking space or something like that. There was a Jeep or something that was blocking. So he took a hacksaw and he sawed it in half. It took him hours, but he took a hacksaw and sawed the Jeep in half.
So he started like on the roof and he's on the outside, and then, you know, he gets through and he's still cutting into the interior until the car's in half.
These were the days before podcasts and videos and social media. So the only thing I know, that's the story that is told. It's got a little urban legend in it, but
yeah,
it does have to do with him using a saw to cut a Jeep in half.
Oh, that is amazing. Thank you so much. So correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm not mistaken, by 1990, are the two of you coaching together in some capacity at BYU?
Yeah, we are. I was a graduate assistant in '89, and then in '90 I got hired full time. And Tom, I think, was that your first year?
'90 was my first year.
Your first year, but Tom's story is pretty cool because I think Tom was a graduate assistant, and then Dick Felt got kind of sick. And you took over for Dick, didn't you?
Yeah, that's why I came up. Dick Felt had a heart attack. That was our DB coach. And Lavelle asked me, that's how I came up there. Lavelle asked me if I would come and coach the DBs for a year as a graduate assistant so that Lavelle could come back that Dick Felt could come back after he recovered. And so that's how I got to BYU. So when I got there, I was a graduate assistant with Robert and I. And then that was Robbie's first year as a quarterback coach. So we go way back to 1990. And that was, Landon, you got Robbie Bosco in his rookie season as a full-time coach, and he coaches the Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. So since you guys worked together starting in that 90 season, I wanted to ask you, obviously Ty Detmer wins the Heisman, but maybe more importantly, or more interesting to me, tell me about how it was to prepare for the first game of the season against, the defending champs Miami, and you guys upset them. Like, what was it like? What were your offense and defensive game plans? I mean, yeah, tell me about that.
I think back then, going back just to the offense, it was hard to defend our passing game. Even in the 90s, I think teams started throwing the ball more and more, like in the early 90s, mid 90s. But even back then, and we had a pretty good team. We had a lot of guys that we weren't like a flashy team, but we could run a lot of quick routes. And Ty was kind of the master he understood coverage as good as anyone that I've ever been around. And so as a quarterback to be successful, if you can understand coverage and where all your players are and when and where to get rid of the ball, you can just, with pass protection, you can do some damage to defenses. And the one thing that I remember about that game, when both teams are warming up, just before you go in, before the game starts, their whole team went in except for, I think, 4 wide receivers. And we were the only team out there besides them. And they stood in the middle of the field, just egging our fans on and on and on. And you could just tell they were a very cocky, confident team. But I think we were too. And, we had a pretty good year the year before in '89. And so in 90, we had a lot of confidence that we were going to be pretty good. And so it was just one of those magical games that happens. And they don't happen all the time, but when we beat like the whole '84 season, really, and then the '90 game, when we beat Texas A&M and Cougars in Lavelle Edwards Stadium. Those are some magical games where the crowd is really into it. And that game, it was as loud as I've ever heard it. And we just played really good on offense and defense. And we made plays when we had to. And it was a super, super fun game to win.
That's amazing. Even with Miami's speed on defense, because I don't know the game that well, but did you guys still throw a lot more often, like BYU normally would, than you ran, even with Miami's speed on defense?
Oh yeah. We threw the ball. We threw a lot of quick passes. I think Matt Bellini may have had 10 or 11 catches, and then there were times where Ty just made magical plays. He was like in the pocket, then he stepped to the side, and one time he was in the pocket, stepped up, and as he stepped back, two Miami linemen hit each other. And then he throws a touchdown pass to Matt Bellini on that one too. So it's just guys making plays. I think throughout the history of BYU, guys just stepped up and made plays when they had to, especially in those big games. So, I mean, we've had a lot of success and a lot of big wins, and it's just been fun to be a part of BYU history.
It's really cool.
Landon, my recollection from that game is one, it's my second favorite BYU game of all time. The first is obviously the Holiday Bowl with the Miracle Bowl with SMU.
Okay.
But
yeah.
this was the best home game. They were number one rank. They come in. I don't know the number exactly, but it's somewhere around, on that team were like 13 guys that went and played in the NFL.
Yeah, I know Russell Maryland for
sure. Come out that year, but there were a bunch of them, and there were some great players on that team.
Yeah.
But to go back to Robbie's story, he's talking about those wide receivers stayed out. Our team goes in, or their team goes in, and they're marching down the middle of the field with nobody, all their team's gone, and their hands are in the air looking like, give us a little bit of love. And my DBs, I was a DB coach that year, and it's the first year I'm really the DB, a full-time coach. And all I can think of is my guys are scared to death. There's no way they're ever going to be able to defend these guys because they were really good. They had some great players. And so I had just finished playing the year before now, Landon. So I still had a little bit of that blood flowing in me. And I was still just a few months away from playing, and my blood was boiling, and I went and grabbed those DBs, and I was grabbing their face mask, getting a little hot, like, we're not gonna let these guys do that on our field. And I'm thinking, what are these guys gonna do about it? They can't cover these guys. And I'm gonna just say, you got Tony Crutchfield, Irvin Lee, Dewey Gray, Josh, what's my guy, Josh Arnold, David Henderson, and all of them played the game of their life. They played the game of their life, and that's what had to happen because that's the only way we could have beat them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. On the defensive side, strategically, what were you thinking more? Were you thinking more about stuffing the run, first and foremost, or were you more concerned about the pass, or was it about even? I mean, what were you guys strategizing about the most?
I think that Miami, my recollection is they got a little bit brash. Like they were not going to, we stopped some things early and then we scored, so we didn't let them run away from it. And as it got longer, they didn't want to start panicking. So they just kept staying with the same thing they've been doing. And like I said, our players started making plays on defense and offense. And so when it got down to the end, Robbie said it, I've never seen Lavelle Edwards Stadium that crazy before. And there's been some games lately that have been on fire, but this is before fireworks and drones all over the stadium. You didn't have Cosmo jumping through fire hoops. This was just raw emotion coming from the fans. And you could not hear. It was like playing in the Superdome where it was deafening. And I think it had an effect on Miami and what they were doing. And we just had a couple players, particularly Ty. I mean, one of the things about that game, Ty split. Was that the game,
Yeah, he split his chin.
Split his chin open, and he had to go in. When Ty went in to get his stitches, I'm like, it's over. This is done. And because, we can't win without Ty. And then about a series later, it was a series. Robbie, it's your story. You tell it.
No, I mean, it's true what Tom's saying. It's a great story. I mean, he took a head-on hit right in the chin and just split it wide open. And Ty probably would have played without it getting stitched up. That's the kind of guy he was. But he went in, got a shot, got it stitched up, and I don't know what he had on his chin, but it was all over the place. But he was just tough. And he's just a little guy. Ty's not a very big guy, but he has just like Tom's DBs, the Cougars play with a lot of heart. And that just makes up a lot of difference. I'd rather have guys play with heart than cockiness. And that's what our guys did all the time, and just making plays. And it was just one of the great victories of all time there.
That's really cool. So he needed stitches in his chin, but he still went back out and finished a good amount of the game that was still left, huh?
Oh, when he came out of the locker room, the crowd went crazy because they thought he was done. They didn't know what happened, and then everyone on the players and coaches knew on the sideline what had happened. And you see a lot of pictures after it occurred where he's got this tape around his lip and up here, and they're like, "What's he got on his chin?" Well, that's the story. And so, like, when he came back, he was better than he was before, and he just was so resilient. And I just think, like, when he came back out, the energy level. Just if it was an indoor stadium, would have blown the roof off.
That is so amazing. That's so cool. Now was there just one loss during that regular season that year?
Yeah, I think we. Oh no! Wait, Ron, I'm not sure.
I think we might have had more than one loss.
Was one of the first loss? Were you guys undefeated for a while before you guys finally lost?
Oh, man. Landon, you're asking me to go past 2 weeks.
Sorry. I guess okay, one of my questions
I can't remember that one. Hopefully Tom's looking it up on his phone.
No, you're fine. What was the game when William Thomas separated Ty's shoulders?
That was Texas A&M in the Holiday Bowl.
Oh, did you win? You said earlier, did you still win that game, though?
No. No. You're talking about that match wasn't very good. They actually dominated us, and it was kind of one of those games where I lost a lot of respect for that head coach. I mean, they're up by like 30, 40 points, and they were doing double reverse passes and just trying to pour it on. And
yeah.
I remember Ty was walking off the field. Both shoulders, I think, were dislocated. I think he just couldn't go anymore. But it was one of those games where we could not pass protect. They were very super fast around the edge, and that was a tough game for us.
Okay, maybe that's the main loss I'm thinking of. I see. But anyway, so it's interesting. Obviously, Uncle Robbie, you're in the mix of what I'm about to ask because you are a quarterback. But if you were to compare all, the great tradition of BYU quarterbacks, you guys have just said that you feel like Ty Detmer might have been the best ever at recognizing coverages. Do you feel like he's the best, ever for BYU between yourself, Steve Young, Jim McMahon, and him? How does that comparison go in your mind? I mean,
it's so hard to say all that. I'm not going to sit here and say anything about myself, but I was a freshman the year McMahon played, and McMahon was pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, McMahon was really good. And, he was also a guy that understood coverages. Ty understood coverages. I mean, when you talk about what you would call the quarterback factory, you're not part of that factory because you could throw a football. You had something up here where you could understand coverage, you could understand blitzes, you could understand when you had to throw hot. I mean, if you just stood there and didn't know what was going on, like, for instance, I think it was McMahon's junior year. Was that New Mexico, Tom?
Yeah.
Against New Mexico, they blitzed like crazy. I never even saw the film, but for some reason we either couldn't pick up the blitz or something, and we got hammered. We could not block anybody. They were coming from all over the place, and that was the only loss of that season. And then once we got everything situated and understood, that's what made us great players. We probably all came in as good players, but I think we ended up being great players because we understood those little things that Tom was talking about early on about what to look for. I remember when I was just a backup to Steve, I went in, I got to play a lot against UTEP, and they would come up like they're blitzing, so I got kind of panicky, so I called all these blitzes, a blitz package, and they just drop off. I'm like, oh man, that wasn't even close. They're dropping off 8 guys, and I have like 7 guys in there protecting us. And so those little things you learn with playing, and that didn't happen too often after that, but those are just some of the things what make great players great. And I don't know who the best ever was there. Ty Detmer wins the Heisman, so that's a pretty good start to being a pretty good player.
I mean, Landon, when you think about it, a lot of people don't realize this, but I don't think any school in the country can match this. But BYU had 4 quarterbacks in a row that got elected into the College Football Hall of Fame. Giff Nielsen, Mark Wilson, Jim McMahon, Steve Young. So you got 4 that are in the College Football Hall of Fame in a row. Now, right after that, you have a streak of a lot of Robbie, and you guys, I'm going to leave some out, but Sarkisian, Hall, Beck, Zach, Ty wins the Heisman Trophy. He's in the Hall of Fame. That's 5. So it's hard when you start talking about the greatest quarterback when you've got 5 in the College Football Hall of Fame, 4 in a row, and about 5 or 6 others that would really be the best quarterback in their school history if they were at another school.
That is amazing. That's really cool. It's really amazing. Tom, let me ask you another story. As a D-back with the Niners, that famous 85 game against Dallas, as a fellow D-back, I don't know, were you in the locker room or were you in the training room, or when Ronnie Lott asked to have his finger chopped off because he hit that guy so hard at Dallas? That's one of my favorite football stories of all time, college or pro. So were you, I don't know, were you in the training room? Were you there like right when he asked, or,
Robbie and I have been together for 40 years, so he's heard this story. He could tell you the story, but it wasn't really actually in a game. He heard it in a game, and he got smashed, and it basically was over time. In a quick amount of time of like a week or so, he had to make a decision to either have surgery and be able to play after about 6 weeks, or have it amputated. Excuse me, if he had surgery, he'd have to miss the whole season, or he could have it amputated and play after it healed up in about 6 weeks. So, I mean, the sacrifice was most players would have just said, hey, I'll just have the surgery, I'll miss the whole season. He said, let's just cut it off, and then I can play in 6 weeks. And that's a crazy story. So it didn't get lopped off in the locker room.
Oh, see, obviously by the time I've heard it a million times.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, urban legend.
Yeah.
But it's a true story, and that's one of my best friends, and he still, to this day, when we see each other, it's like, hey, how's that? Let me see that finger, Ronnie. And he made a sacrifice of a body part for his team. Think about that. He said, I am the captain of the team. I'm important to this team. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the future. I just care about this team now. I'm playing. And so he took what he thought was the lesser of 2 evils, and that was to cut it off.
That's probably one of my favorite football stories ever. With the rest of the team, I mean, how much were you guys, whether it's when he wasn't around, or were you guys buzzing about it? How much did you guys all talk about it and stuff, in practice or whatever.
Well, I mean, you think about this, Land. I think it changed the demeanor of our team for the whole organization forever. And because that you know that everybody that plays on that team knows that story even now. And so when someone comes out to practice and they're a little tired or their hammy's a little tight or they got a little boo-boo, you're not coming off the field. Ronnie's out there with his finger cut off. You can't very well take the easy road out. And it's hard these days, Landon, because players make so much money now. You can't afford to have players miss long periods of time. And so they're very, very cautious with players. But in those days, from talking to your dad that players played hurt a lot. And there was a fine line between playing with pain and playing hurt. And things are different, but it's reasonable because of the safety concerns that we have now and other things that are factors that are involved.
That's really cool. But it's cool to hear that, from then on for maybe, the face of the organization for, the rest of the 4 years you were there, it just kind of changed the whole culture among the whole team, knowing that he had done that. So that's really cool. I
mean, like I see Ronnie every time I look at him, when I see him, it's not so much his finger. That's how he lived his life. That's how he played the game. That's how he led on our team. When you think about it and people go, that's the most insane thing ever. How could he do that? We go, this is Ronnie.
That's really cool. That's amazing. Uncle Robbie, you're coaching during the famous 2001 season. Overall, I know obviously we just talked about the famous 90 season. Where does that, with all your years in the organization, where does that famous 2001 season rank in terms of how great the team was and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a great story in itself, because it kind of goes back the year before where, or 2 years before, when Brandon Doman was probably maybe the fourth, fifth best quarterback, not player, just quarterback. And he wasn't really a good practice player, and he just had a hard time throwing the ball. So we had a hard time putting him in the game. And then Lavelle's last season in 2000, we were 4-6. We were about ready to have Lavelle's worst season ever, first losing season ever. And we're like, I remember looking at Lance Reynolds and I said, hey, let's give Brandon a shot. I mean, we're 4-6. We're not going anywhere. And we're playing the two best defenses in Utah and New Mexico. So let's give him a shot, see what he can do. So we put a little wrinkle in there and we ran a little option. So it wasn't a big, like all those blocking schemes. It was like, read the end man on the line of scrimmage and you're either going to run it or you're pitching it. And we had Luke Staley back there. And so playing the two top ranked defenses in our conference, we go and beat both teams. That was the famous quote by President Hinckley at the time, came in the locker room. It was Lavelle's last game, and he told the team, don't muff it. Like, don't blow it for Lavelle. We got to win this game. And it was awesome. It just kind of fired everybody up. And we go out and win both games. So it's like, hey, this is our guy. I mean, we looked pretty good against those teams. And then 2000 came, and we were loaded on offense. I mean, we had five senior offensive linemen with all experience. We had Luke Staley, Doman. We had James. Let's see, was James? No, James I was way before then. And so offensively, it didn't really matter how many points were scored against us, because we were going to score a lot of points, and we were just good. And then it came down to Luke got hurt, a bunch of people got hurt. We go to Hawaii, they beat us pretty good, and we ended up with 2 losses there. But offensively, it was a pretty powerful team, and Luke Staley was probably one of the best running backs that we've ever had. unfortunately, with his injuries that he had, and he just never got a chance to really play in the NFL. But it was a pretty locked up team.
That's amazing. Now, that
Landon,
famous.
let me jump in for a second.
Yeah, please.
When
Yeah.
I was rattling off a list of the great quarterbacks at BYU, and like Robbie said, Brandon Doman, doesn't have the stats or the awards or honors to put him up in the ranks amongst the great ones. But because of what he did for the Cougar football program that year, helping, they never could have done it without him, helping Lavelle not have a losing season that year. I think that all the eras of BYU football were watching that season. And so, like, I think Brandon Doman goes down in the lore of Cougar football as one of the great football quarterbacks because of those few games that he played. Yeah. And I think that's a cool thing about college football or sports in general, is you can make a name for yourself in a game because of something so special you did. And that little few games that Brandon played where he really was the star of the show and took the team to that non-losing record. I wasn't anything near near those teams, and I was rooting like crazy for him to win.
Oh, that's really cool. That's amazing. Correct me if I'm wrong on that famous 0-1 season, because you were undefeated until the end when you got 2 losses, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Were Reno and Doug Jolly also starting on that team?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. I remember my dad telling the story. So you guys were undefeated towards the end, and Hawaii is the one that snapped the undefeated streak first, correct?
They were, yeah.
Okay. Do you remember the conversation? Go ahead.
We went from a Doak Walker Award winner to it really didn't matter who played behind Luke. We went from probably one of the best college running backs. I'm not going to say ever, but he was just amazing how good he was. And so when we lost Luke, we lost a lot.
Yeah.
And so that was a tough thing. The thing that was frustrating for us was we were making some noise because we were undefeated. And even during that time, even after doing what we've done in the past, the NCAA did not want us to play in one of those big bowl games. And so before we even played in Hawaii, they told us that we're out, that we have no chance to be in there anymore. So they just kind of took us out of the equation.
Really?
Yeah. So if they would have just waited and we lost that game, then, people would have said, oh, okay, that makes more sense. But so it was kind of a tough one to swallow that they really disrespected us that year after such a great season we were having.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel generally it's because you're a religious school, a Mormon school, that they didn't want you guys playing in the bowl game at all costs?
I think that might be part of it. I also think the conference has something to do with it. I mean, that's why I think a lot of credit goes to this guy, well, not sitting next to me, but on a podcast he's next to me. What Tom did as an AD to go, and he has to make, this is a big decision. I'm sure he has people talking to him, but it all boils down to him making this decision of going independent. Of a couple of times we had opportunities to possibly get into the Big Ten, or the Pac-10, but we didn't, which was a super blessing. And then we're in the Big 12. And so I think now we've got the respect of everybody, and we're having good teams, and we're playing good, and we're beating good teams. And so I just can't say enough about Tom. And one more quick story about Tom is Tom has been a mentor to me pretty much ever since I got into coaching. I've never coached before. I really didn't know. And then once Tom was done with BYU, I mean, he coached, I'm not sure the order, he could explain that more, but he was at Cal, he was at Stanford, he was with the Niners. And so there were a couple times where I had interviews to coach in the NFL, and I would talk to Tom. I think when that one happened, he was at Cal as the head coach. And I would talk to him and say, Tom, tell me, I have no idea. and he just laid it out there. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He says it's a strain. It's hard with family, with everything. And so those kind of things, it's so nice to have someone to talk to, especially when they're not at BYU, when they are kind of away.
Like an objective third party kind of thing?
Yeah. And so, look, I owe a lot to Tom. Tom's one of my guys. We've known each other for I don't know how, but about 45 years now. And so he's one of a kind, and he's one of my best friends.
Thank you, Robbie.
Oh, that's really cool. Thank you. My dad has always told me when your undefeated streak was snapped against University of Hawaii in 2001, pretty shortly after that game, do you remember the conversation you had with my dad on the phone?
I don't.
Okay. He's told me that you were, he called you maybe a day after the devastating loss, which made it, so that you guys didn't have an undefeated season. And you said to him, between me and you, I'm actually happy that we lost. And my dad said, why? And you said, because it means that our team was the only undefeated team. And then my dad said,
I can say this, Landon. There's no way I said all that stuff.
I remember to this day, like a few days after the conversation, my dad told us this as a family. And then he said to you, so what were you like in the locker room against Hawaii? And you said, oh, I just acted really sad like everybody else.
Oh, I'm not sure about that story. That's one of those Sikahema stories, I think, that are floating around.
Well, there's definitely a lot of those with, some sugar coating.
There you go.
Tom, if you don't mind me asking, I believe your last season as the head coach of Berkeley was 2001, that same season. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I know it was your last season, so I don't, it might not have been a great season, so maybe this wasn't on your radar, but I thought I'd ask. I don't know how the recruiting process works, in college, but in 2001, it famously was the very first national championship game for high school between De La Salle and Long Beach Poly. And it was played in October of 2001. And I know, 3 years later, Deshaun Jackson would come to Berkeley, and as a sophomore, he was starting on this 01 Long Beach Poly team. But, this was a really famous thing at the time, particularly in the area. But between all these hotshot, players on both teams, between De La Salle and Long Beach Poly, and I know De La Salle isn't too far from Berkeley. I think they had Maurice Jones-Drew. But as a head coach of Berkeley, I don't know how early you're thinking about recruiting, but was this much on your radar? Did you care much? Were you watching this stuff closely and having your eye on this with, a mind for recruiting? All these players between Deshaun Jackson, Herschel Dennis, and, Cameron Colvin, Maurice Jones-Drew, Darnell Bing. Were you thinking about that much or not really?
That might have been a year after, because I know that we recruited De La Salle like crazy, but at that time, De La Salle was putting their players all throughout the country. There's a kid named DJ Williams who was really, really their first star that went to University of Miami and was on that national championship team, played in the NFL for a little while. But they had more players and more players. I'd say when I was coaching at Cal, we probably had 5 kids from De La Salle that played on our team. So it was kind of like the Timpview, BYU connection at the time. And there's the head coach at Cal right now is a guy by the name of Tosh Lupoy. Tosh Lupoy was from De La Salle and came and played with us, was a great player, had some great college coaching gigs at Alabama and Oregon as a defensive coordinator this last year, and is now the head coach. So I remember going down, and Mercedes Lewis was a tight end at Long Beach Poly. The year that we were down there recruiting, Long Beach Poly had 19 Division I candidates or recruits on one team, 19 that people were looking at. There was it looked like a coaching combine. I mean, a player combine with all the coaches there. So, there were a lot of great teams back there, but those were 2 of them.
Yeah, interesting. That's really cool. If you don't mind me asking, There's a lot of teams to compare, but since you guys have been in the organization for so long and you've been together for so long, particularly in the 2000s, all this time, if you were to rank, could you rank me the top 5 best teams in BYU history? And I don't know if you'd include any of those great Bronco teams, with Harvey Unga and Austin Collie and Dennis Pitta and the great line with Ray Fenga and Travis Bright, or any of these Kalani teams. But, what do you think are the top 5 best teams in BYU history?
Go ahead, Tom.
I'll throw one out and you throw one out. We'll get to 5.
I like that, yeah.
I think I'll do number one. Number one's got to be the national championship team. One, they had great players. You could look at some other teams and maybe make some comparisons. And some people will argue that maybe some teams might have been a little bit more talented, but you can't take away from the fact that they were the number one team in the country and were loaded. So that's my number one, Robbie. You're number 2.
Sorry, real quick, before you go, Uncle Robbie, if you don't mind me asking, we can just little tangent. Would you both say, do you think the best defense ever was that 84 national championship team?
I mean, they were good. We had guys, Leon White, Kurt Gouveia. I named them before, but
was Jason Buck on that? He started on that team also?
No, he wasn't at the school. I think we were ranked in the top 10 in the country.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty good team. So, but I don't know. I mean, I think Tom had some good teams, Tom. I mean, was it 83 or 2? No, not 83, but 82, I think, was pretty good.
81.
81?
Yeah. That was McMahon's senior year.
I think a team, Landon, and I was coaching during this time, was 96. They went to the Cotton Bowl.
Oh, with Chad Lewis and Atula Mealy?
Chad Lewis, Atula Mealy. I mean, we could do anything on offense. We could go double tight, single back, double tight, 2 back. And those tight ends were so good. And then we had James Dye, who was just the biggest threat ever as a punt returner. And that team was just a really good team, really solid team, a lot of good players. One of the best linebackers I've always felt was Shea Muirbrook, who was very undersized. If he had the size of a Rob Morris, I think he would have played in the NFL for a lot of years. So I would put 96 as one of those teams.
Did you guys win that bowl game that year?
Yeah.
We beat Kansas. Yep, we were 14-1. We lost to Washington up at their place about halfway through the season.
Was Lawyer Malloy on that team that you lost to?
I don't know.
Okay, you're good. Okay, nice. So 96. Go ahead, Tom.
I'm gonna go old school. I'd say that 81 team with or the 80, maybe even the 80, the Holiday Bowl team that we won. That was a really good team. We lost when we beat SMU, they were the second place team in the Southwest Conference at that time, which is now the Big 12. And that was a great team. Back in those days, if you didn't win the conference, you didn't go to a bowl game unless you were Ohio State, Michigan, UCLA, USC. There were maybe 2 or 3 conferences had 2. Everybody else had 1. And I think that was a team where we lost 1 game, and that was a really good team. But I'll stop right here because it's going to be hard for Robbie. I think like we said, we've been around for, I came here in 78, and to compare teams from early 70s to now 2025, which last year's Kalani's team was a really, really good team. I think Zach had a quarterbacked a couple of good teams. I think Max and Beck quarterbacked a couple good teams. So I just think it's so hard to take the eras and try to have the best teams or players.
Yeah. Sure.
So that being said, Robbie, I threw in a little urge on one of the old school because people forget about those teams, but you can throw maybe one of the newer teams in.
No, I think, like Tom said, it gets really hard. I think you have the teams that kind of stand out because of what was accomplished.
Yeah.
But then we just had a bunch of really good teams. I mean, I look, I'm just going to skip to the NFL. The best player in the NFL now seems to be Fred Warner. I mean, he's one of the top guys, and Puka is one of the top
Yeah.
receivers, and we have individual guys that have stood out. And I honestly don't know another team. I mean, there's just so many good ones, Landon. I'm not sure if I could even name one. Kalani's had some really good teams.
Yeah.
He's won a lot of football games since he's been head coach. Bronco won a lot of football games when he was head coach. Uh, so I think at least I'm going to stop with those three and a whole bunch of other good ones.
Uh,
Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll stop right there. But one of the things that kind of looking back historically, Landon, at this point in my life, I'm 66 years old. I've been associated with 29 years here on campus of playing, coaching, or administrator. So I've seen those teams firsthand, but I've been watching BYU for 50 years. And the thing that I'm starting to feel now is just the program. And instead of saying, let's take this one out and this one out, I just think like I'm thinking in terms of this is one great program that like the brothers that when I came as a freshman, there were some great, great players and great teams before I even got there. And so I look at those guys as being kind of the forerunners that led to the building up of some of Lavelle's great teams. And then Gary Croton had a tremendous year that one year. He passed the torch on to Bronco, and Bronco passed the torch on to Kalani. And now we're in the living years right now. And I know how Kalani gives so much respect to Lavelle and the players from the past. We just had an alumni game a couple months ago, or about a month ago, and he talked to the whole alums, all the alums. There's a ton of people there. And he credits them, and rightfully so, for the start of what we have today. And so I'm just happy to see that all of Cougar Nation realizes, man, we've had a good run for about 50 years.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really awesome. That's amazing. Well, thank you guys so much. I'll close there. I'll let you guys go. But again, Robbie Bosco and Tom Holmoe, thank you guys both so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
I can't let this go. We talk about a lot of players, but the host today, Robbie, is Landon Sikahema. So Robbie, I'm gonna let you say something first because we're both teammates of Vai's, but let's talk a little bit about Vi before we hang up.
Yeah, I mean, I love Vi. Vi is like a brother to me. And Landon, your brothers, sisters, you guys are all like family. And so I have total respect. Vi and Kayala fed me a lot at their home when they were married. And it's just, I think Lavella said this a lot, and I really feel this about my teammates. And I know a lot of people because I coached for 14 years and I played for 5 years. But to me, the most impressive thing is what these players have done with their lives after football. I mean, I can't be more proud of them. And Vi is on that list of one of my best of what he's accomplished, what he's doing now, how he's serving the Lord. And we're so grateful. We talk all the time now. It's kind of hard because of the time difference in Africa, but somehow we can kind of find the right time to be able to talk to each other. But I love your pops, and he's done a great job, him and Kiala, of raising you guys, and we love you all.
Thank you so much, Uncle Robbie. Love you guys too. Appreciate it.
Good. I just end it by saying when Vi came a couple years after me, Robbie used the word family, the term, and in term of endearment. Vi was one of those players that came that brought this family atmosphere. He tied it together. I came from a high school in Southern California. There was one Polynesian kid at our school, and he was Hawaiian. And so, like, when I get to BYU, my freshman year, I think we had seven Polynesian players on our team. And that's right where I get to understand and learn and love the culture of the team, that the Polynesians brought so much more than I'd ever seen. And Vai is just like the epitome of all the love and passion and competitiveness and joking and all the everything. And he just put his arms around everybody. And today, Landon, Robbie and I and you, we're all family. And Vi in South Africa, man, I love you all, and it's great to feel that love.
Thank you, Tom. Love you too. Thanks so much. Again, Robbie Bosco and Tom Holmoe, thank you guys again both so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it, and good luck to both of you being mission presidents in the next month.
Go Cougs!
Go Cougs!
Go.